Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night Legacy. I am proud to present our very first modern match for the channel. I'll let Eric take it away from here.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Tuesday Night Legacy. This is a special edition. We got a Modern 1K from June 4th. That was a Saturday. Recorded at Spellhold Games. We got 6 Swiss rounds to go through for you. This is round 1. On the top, we have Grixis Shadow. That's a black, red, green mid-range deck playing Death Shadow and several ways to lose life, mostly fetch lands, but also stuff like Thoughtseize and Street Wraith. This deck also runs Dress Down as a combat trick. The Death Shadow loses its ability and becomes a 13/13. There's one other combo. The deck runs Croxa, and you can, if you have a Dress Down out, cast the Croxa from your hand, and it doesn't trigger the discard portion of it, but it does trigger, or it also does not trigger the sacrifice portion. So you could have a 2-mana Croxa with that little combo. Other than that, it's mostly just good stuff: Expressive Iteration, Unholy Heat, Dragon's Rage Channeler. I imagine Ragavan's in there, but yeah, it's a deck that was probably the best deck in the format when Lurrus was around, but Lurrus is now banned, and you don't quite see it as much anymore. On the bottom in the white sleeves, we have black-green Yawgmoth, which is a creature-based combo deck. It plays a bunch of creatures with Undying. When they die, they come back with a +1/+1 counter, and then the title card of the deck is Yawgmoth, and he's able to sack creatures to put negative counters, and those negative counters cancel out with the +1 counters and reset Undying. So if you have 2 creatures out, you could just pass the counter back and forth between them and draw as many cards as you want. And you could assemble other pieces of the combo like Zulaport Cutthroat and Geralf's Messenger to make sure that your opponent is losing more life than you are, and you can just kind of take him out of the game that way. You don't deal infinite damage because you do have to draw cards for each of these, but yeah, it's a pretty resilient deck and fairly popular. So let's go ahead and see how this goes. We have Black Green Yawgmoth on the play for game 1. Most commonly a mana dork on turn 1. Yeah, there's the Ignoble Hierarchy, fetch shocks down to 17. Grixis Shadow will fetch shock, a classic opener for them. Black-red, that could either be a turn 1 threat or a discard spell. We'll see which one it is. Oh, it's an Unholy Heat to slow things down and kill that Ignoble Hierarch. But here's a Wall of Roots into a bird for Yawgmoth. The mana was not the issue. So here comes Dragon's Rage Channeler into Mishra's Bauble, a classic little combination to filter draws. Check myself, decide if I want to crack or if I want to draw that card. I do want to crack, so we fetch shock down to 14, grabbing a Watery Grave. This is probably a discard spell. I don't think there's many single blue cards in the deck. And yeah, there's that Thoughtseize upon resolution that's going to lose him 2 life. So we'll be at 12. We see Yawgmoth, Geralf's Messenger, and a bird, and the mana to cast that Yawgmoth. So yeah, we'll go ahead and take that bad boy away. There's a second Mishra's Bauble. This one's going to crack, checking the opponent's top, and every Surveil trigger so far has binned a card. So he's probably looking for a Croxa or something similar in that vein. On Yawgmoth's turn, he draws and plays a Young Wolf and a Geralf's Messenger and passes it back. There's the Darcy crashing in for 3. So life total right now for Death Shadow, I believe, is 10 after the Geralf's Messenger trigger. Here's an Expressive Iteration. Looks like he binned whatever he saw on top there. I think it was another bauble. And he exiles a Unholy Heat. So looks like he is actually going to cast that fetch shock down to 7 life. Getting pretty dicey here. Opponent has 4 power on board. 7 isn't very comfy, especially with no blockers. If he is intending on casting that Unholy Heat, could start getting pretty rough. And the Heat does target the bird, as targeting either of the other Undying creatures would buff them up, and Geralf's Messenger would trigger and deal 2 more damage. Um, just lays out a bird on Yawgmoth's turn and passes back. Shadow plays a swamp, basic swamp from the hand, swings in with the Darcy, and then casts. Yeah, Croak said that he had just binned from one of those surveil triggers. Escape 5, got to get rid of 5 cards from the yard and cast it, and then the opponent must discard a card, and they lose 3 life if it's a land or a non-creature card. However, he plays a hasty Strangleroot Geist and gets in there. The opponent swinging with enough creatures to overwhelm that Kroxa. No possible combination of blocks to be done to survive with a mere 4 life left. Just not coming out of the gate strong enough, not enough creatures to gum up the board and slow Yawgmoth down, just winning a fair creature beats game. We'll go ahead and move into game 2. And Grixis Shadow on the play. Both keeping 7. Cycle Street Wraith down to 18. Draw a card. That was a dress down, so that could come into play at some point here. Fetch Shock the Bloodstained Mire down to 15. It's a Water Grave, most likely a discard spell. Yep, Thoughtseize. So new life total for Shadow is 13, and we see 2 Strangleroot Geists, an Ignoble, and a Yawgmoth. Geist is very difficult to deal with for a deck mostly comprised of 1-for-1 removal spells. So it is the target of this Thoughtseize, and the Yawgmoth remains in the hand, probably packing a removal spell that could deal with that, and it is a couple turns away, so I think this is probably the correct choice here. Ignoble Hierarch on Yawgmoth's turn, nothing else. He goes ahead and passes back, and Shadow will play a Blood Crypt Shocked, so he's at 11, and he's able to play a 2/2 Death Shadow. Here comes a Strangleroot Geist. No swing, interesting. Here's an Expressive Iteration. Finds a land. We'll go ahead and play that. So potentially dealing another 3 damage to himself would put him down to 8. He is going to go ahead and do that. So the Shadow is a 5/5 at this point, and the Strangleroot Geist trump blocks, triggering Undying and coming back with a counter. Here's a Delirious Dragon's Rage Channeler, thanks to that Street Wraith. Creature's already in the yard. Young Wolf, pass back. There's the 4th land. So Shadow is at 8. It's a 5/5 Shadow. And flying a Dragon's Rage Channeler. So crashing in for a pretty decent chunk of damage. Looks like no blocks were declared. Here comes a dress down. So Darcy's going to shrink. However, Shadow is going to be a 13/13. Just a pretty big guy. Pretty huge chunk of damage coming out. Here's a fetch. Down to 7, grabbing a basic. Trying to keep that life total at a reasonable level. And a Terminate on the Young Wolf while Dress Down is out. So the Undying does not trigger thanks to that Dress Down. Passing it back to Yawgmoth. That's a Dryad Arbor. We know about the Yawgmoth in hand, so he's potentially able to play it here thanks to that Twilight Mire filtering green into black. And yeah, there he is. So if the Shadow swings in again, what can happen is the Dryad Arbor can be sacrificed to remove that counter from the Strangleroot Geist, and then it can trigger Undying again and come back untapped and actually block the Shadow. Somewhat complicated board state. There's 2 cards left in Yawgmoth's hand. The only free card in the deck is Endurance post-board. So our Grixis Shadow player does have to consider that as a possibility. Thinking about what to do here. I'm not sure what Yawgmoth's life total is, but it can't be very high after a 14 damage swing. So Grixis comes in hot with both creatures. Here we go. Here's that play I was talking about. Dryad Arbor sniping the counter off of the Geist, and then Geist sacrificing itself to trigger Undying, putting a counter on the Darcy, and coming back untapped. Now here's an Evoked Endurance, sacrificing, removing the counter from the Geist. So far 3 cards have been drawn and 3 life has been lost from the Yawgmoth. The Endurance trigger goes off, puts the graveyard back. Thanks to the counter on the Dragon's Rage Channeler, it was it immediately dies due to state-based effects, as it no longer has Delirium and is a 1/1 with a -1/-1 counter on it. Here's a Street Wraith cycle, and I believe the Strangleroot Geist is blocking this Death Shadow. Yeah, he casts a Dress Down, and unfortunately, the swing back is going to be enough to take him out of the game, so he scoops it up. That was a pretty quick round 1 of this Modern 1K. I'll be coming back for you with round 2, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Spellhold for letting us film. I'll see you next time.